I still remember that morning vividly. The air was crisp, still carrying a bit of winter's chill, but sunlight had started to peek through the bare branches. Like always, I was up before 6, made my coffee, folded my blanket, and started loading the flower pots into the car for market. My stall was right at the entrance of the town's farmers market. I knew nearly everyone by face. They called me the flower lady teacher, and I never minded. To be honest, I still needed the money. Ellie sent what she could from New York, and I appreciated it, but I was never one to sit around waiting to be taken care of. As I bent to lift the last basketone that sat a little too low, I heard a quiet pop in my left knee, and then I lost all balance. My whole body collapsed onto the cold cement. The basket tipped over, crushing a few blooms. Carl rushed over faster than I expected. He always watched quietly, even if he never said much. A few people nearby helped me up. I bit my lip, swallowing the groan, and muttered, "I'm fine. Just slipped." But deep down, I knew. My body wasn't what it used to be. That fall, it didn't just bruise my knee. It scraped up my pride. Carl drove us home slowly. The car was old, the leather seats worn, but the silence inside felt better than any pain medication. He didn't ask questions. Just reached over and placed a hand on mine, steadying me in the moment. Back home, I eased into my armchair in the living room, propping my leg up on a pillow. Carl made tea. I sat upright, pretending to be fine, but the pain in my knee throbbed with a quiet persistence, reminding me I wasn't Miss Martha, the lively literature teacher, anymore. The phone rang. Carl pressed speaker. Ellie's voice filled the room. "Mom, Dad told me you fell. Are you okay?" I smiled, trying to sound calm. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just a small fall. I sent you some extra money today. Please, Mom, take it easy. Hire someone to help with the market. Don't push yourself." I nodded out of habit. Ellie was always thoughtful. Busy in New York, yet she still called, still sent money on time. Better than some folks who lived right next door. After the call ended, Carl looked at me. He was about to say something, but as usual, said nothing. I muttered, "That girl, Ellie, she really gets it." Carl didn't respond. I saw his gaze drift toward the window, where sunlight lit up the thinning silver strands on my head. He didn't say it, but I knew. He was thinking of someone else. And so was I. I still liked sitting out on the porch in the mornings, when traffic was light and the air still cool. The old rocking chair Carl made when the kids were little creaked beneath me, like it remembered our whole story. Nancy, my neighbor, walked by like she did every day. She usually brought over extra celery from her garden, even though I hardly cooked anymore. Today, she paused when she saw the bandage on my knee. "Martha, did you fall again? Lord, have mercy. You've got to be more careful. What would Carl do if something happened to you?" I chuckled, keeping my tone strong. "I'm all right. Ellie just wired me some more money this morning. Told me to rest and hire someone to help. No need to worry." Nancy's eyes widened. "That girl of yours is something else. Busy as she is, still thinking of her mother-in-law." I nodded, feeling a small flutter of pride. She's got a good job in the city. Never let me go without. Birthdays, holidays, her father's memorial, she remembers them all. Nancy smiled. "You're lucky, Martha. Truly." I looked down the street, where my kids once brought their sweethearts home. I didn't say it aloud, but honestly, of my 3 daughters-in-law, Ellie was the one who always felt like she saw me. She was thoughtful, organized, never complained or tried to play the victim. I didn't tell Nancy that Rachel stopped by earlier, or that Jenny hadn't called in a while. I didn't mention the grandkids who'd been staying with me all week. Not because I forgot, because I didn't know how to say it without feeling that lump rise in my throat. So instead, I looked straight ahead and said, firmly, "This life? My greatest blessing is having Ellie as a daughter-in-law." That afternoon, I was shelling mung beans at the kitchen table when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I didn't have to look, I already knew. That old gray sedan could only be Rachel's. Moments later, she stepped in with Linda, my youngest son's wife. "We brought you some things, Mom," Rachel said, holding a brown paper bag. "Dad said you took a fall, so we came by." I nodded, not saying much. Linda smiled brightly and handed me a plastic container. "I made some chicken broth good for the stomach. I heard older folks are prone to colds after a fall." I didn't like the word older, but I didn't hold it against her. They meant well. I accepted the bag, thanked them, but didn't meet their eyes. Not because I disliked them, I just didn't feel close to them. Not like I did with Ellie. Rachel took off her coat, hovered in the kitchen, and eventually poured herself a glass of water. Linda wandered, asking if I needed help with anything. I told them everything was fine. No one said much, the kitchen filled with quiet, awkward sounds. As they were leaving, Rachel turned and said, "Call us if you need anything, okay?" I just nodded, didn't know what else to say. Carl had been standing on the porch the whole time. When the door closed, he looked at me. They meant well. Don't make them feel unwelcome. I glanced down at the dish of beans. A few had rolled off, still unpeeled. I realized I'd been sitting like this for years, in my own house, among my own family, and never truly opened up. I didn't know why words came easy with Ellie, but felt frozen with Rachel or Linda. Maybe because Ellie was successful. Maybe because I saw parts of myself in her. As for the other two, I'd always thought they were just too simple, too passive. But today, seeing Linda's still warm soup with the scent of ginger, I started to wonder, maybe I'd been looking at things all wrong. I just didn't know yet how to start making them right. I don't remember the exact day, but I remember my voice sharp, like a freshly sharpened knife. The last time I spoke to Jenny, the sky was gray, wind howling outside the porch. She came in through the back door, still wearing her coat, looking exhausted. I was peeling apples in the kitchen, the two grandkids running around my legs. "Mom, I need to talk about leaving the kids over the weekend." I cut her off before she could finish. "Again? Do you think this house is a daycare? How many times have I said, you do what you want, but you should think things through? You disappear and dump the kids here. What kind of mother is that?" Jenny stood there, gripping her bag. She said nothing. Her eyes were red, but she looked straight at Minot, defiant, not angry, just tired and hurt. I kept going, as if the words needed to come out to relieve something in me. "Take a look at yourself. What do you have? A low-paying job, a husband who left, can't even raise 2 daughters. Other women give birth to sons, help their husbands succeed. All you do is burden your mother-in-law." Carl walked in right as I said that last part. He set the groceries down and looked at Minot angry, just deeply sad. Jenny still didn't cry. She only said, "I'm sorry, Mom." Then she bowed her head and led the kids back to the car. I remember Lila turned back and waved her tiny hand. "Bye, Grandma." I didn't answer. The car door closed. The silver car rolled out of the driveway. I stood behind the curtain, still holding the paring knife. My hand trembled slightly, but I wouldn't admit it. I told myself, she needs to know boundaries. In this house, everyone has their part, their responsibilities. You can't let emotion overrule reason. Now, looking back, I'm not sure what part I was right about. All I know is Jenny never came back after that. And I never called to ask her to. The next morning, the house was unusually quiet. No little feet running through the kitchen. No sound of Carl making coffee like always. I walked into the living room, still in my pajamas. Outside, the sun was shining, but inside, I felt cold. I heard the sound of a suitcase dragging on the back porch. Jenny was loading the car. The 2 girls stood beside her, each holding a teddy bear. That sight, it was so quiet, it hurt. I watched from behind the curtain. Jenny wore her faded gray-blue coat, hair tied back. She didn't cry, didn't complain. She just quietly loaded the bags, like finishing something she had decided long ago. Carl went out before me. He didn't say much, just helped tie the milk crate and placed another small bag on the back seat. I heard Lila ask, "Daddy, we're not staying with Grandma anymore?" Jenny whispered, "We'll come back if she wants us to." I pretended I didn't hear. Once everything was packed, Carl stood on the porch. Jenny got in the car, face tense. But before closing the door, she looked at me. I had stepped out by then. I didn't walk forward, didn't say a word. Just stood there, looking at her like a stranger. Not angry, not sad, just not knowing how to stop her. The girls waved through the window. "Bye, Grandma." I pressed my lips together. My heart ached not because they were leaving, but because I didn't know if I'd get another chance to say, "Stay." The car drove off. Dust lifted behind the wheels. Carl stood still for a while, then went back inside. I followed. The door closed behind us with a heavy sound, as if something had just left my life. Maybe for good. I was watering chrysanthemums in the backyard when I heard the sound of feet running up the wooden steps. That sound, I knew it by heart. Quick, lively, like summer wind chasing dragonflies. "Grandma," Lila called first, then Sophie, panting, holding a sandwich bag. The girls darted through the grass, one after the other, hair messy but faces glowing. I straightened up, watering can in hand, water still trickling down. "What are you two doing here?" Carl called from inside. "Jenny brought them this morning. She had an urgent shift, didn't have time to tell you." I didn't answer. I just watched them run around the garden, the same one I once told them not to step on. But today, I didn't mind. In fact, the garden seemed to come alive a little. Sophie tugged my sleeve. "Grandma, do you have pink flowers? Mom says you grow the best." I glanced at Carl. He was squinting, trying to hide a smile. I nodded. "Of course, but only a few have bloomed." Lila brought out a chair, wiped the dust and said, "You sit, Grandma. We'll help water." I wasn't used to being helped, but when I saw them struggle with the watering cans, tiny hands doing their best, I couldn't say no. I sat down, listening to the water splashing, the leaves rustling beneath their feet, and I felt something soften inside, as if the ache in my knee this morning had never existed. Not because the flowers were watered, but because someone still chose to come back to me, even if it was in small, wobbly steps. Real and true. I didn't go outside again. Sitting in the kitchen, I poured myself a cup of ginger tea, pulled a chair close to the window, and watched the backyard. The kids were still playing. They weren't loud like the neighbors' children, just whispering, giggling, chasing each other like kittens in the morning sun. Sophie was scrubbing moss off the porch steps with an old brush, frowning hard. Lila was picking up dry leaves and putting them in a small bucket. No one told them to do it. I didn't ask them. They just did it on their own. I sipped my tea, steam touching my lips. I used to complain about them running around the house, knocking things over, digging in drawers. Now, the house felt too quiet, too clean, too still. Carl came in, saw me watching. "They're good kids," he said, holding a folded newspaper. I just murmured. "They take after their mom," he added. "Jenny used to clean the yard like that without being asked." I didn't respond. I turned back to the window. The girls were now sitting by the lavender bush. Sophie looked up at the sky, laughing like she had caught a cloud. My chest tightened not from pain, but like a memory knocking gently. I didn't tell Carl, but I missed Jenny. Not the helpful daughter-in-law, not the woman who lived here. I missed her quiet endurance. Her red eyes that day, her soft, steady voice, even when I was cruel. I set down my tea, exhaled slowly. At this age, I'm beginning to understand. Sometimes you don't need someone perfect. Just someone who doesn't leave when you're wrong. And Jenny did that, at least until I pushed her away. That night, after feeding the girls, I sat in the living room, legs propped up, a thin blanket on my lap. The television was on, but I wasn't really watching. Carl was cleaning the kitchen, He often did that when he had something on his mind but didn't know how to say it. Eventually, he came in, holding a warm glass of water. He set it on the coffee table. I looked up, then out the window. The garden lights cast soft shadows of the leaves on the wall. "They take after their mom," Carl said calmly, leaning on the chair across from me. "The girls help without being asked. No whining. No need for praise." I frowned slightly, but didn't argue. Something inside my chest eased like a rope long tied, now finally loosening. "Remember how Jenny used to do that?" he said. "When you had migraines, she'd make tea. When you felt tired, she'd wipe your forehead without a word." I pressed my lips, resting a hand on my knee, gripping the blanket tighter. "She was too good at enduring," Carl added, eyes meeting mine. "So you thought staying silent was her duty? But truth is, no one's born to stay quiet forever, Martha." I didn't know what to say. I just looked out the window again. The girls were stacking stones in the garden, laughing softly in the night breeze. I didn't speak it aloud, but I knew Carl was right. I had gotten used to being served. Used to thinking kindness was just natural. I never asked if Jenny was hurting. Never thanked her. Never realized silence can be a scream too. And I didn't hear it. I can't remember the last time I truly slept through the night. Lately, I've been waking up at odd hours, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the heater in the corner. That night was no different. Carl had gone to bed early. His gentle snoring, steady as a wall clock, filled the room. I got up, pulled on my robe, and walked into the living room. The girls were asleep in the guest room. I could hear Sophie mumbling in her dreams, as if talking to someone. The house was so still, I could hear the wind brushing against the window panes. I opened the drawer beneath the bookshelf and pulled out an old photo frame. It was taken on the porch one summer years ago. Standing in the middle, with my hand gently behind Jenny's back. Carl had his arm around Ellie. Rachel held the youngest, just a few months old. Everyone was smiling genuinely, not forced. I touched the glass, right where Jenny stood. Back then, I never noticed the slight heaviness in her eyes, or how her smile drooped just a bit. But now, it was clear. At the time, I thought, I gave them a roof over their heads. I taught them manners. I kept the household in order. I thought that was enough. Now I know those things don't replace a hug, a kind word, or a gentle look when someone feels weak. I placed the frame back into the drawer and closed it. The night was still, but something in me had shifted like a dried-up branch touched by new sap. Maybe it was regret, maybe tears. All I knew was my heart wasn't numb anymore. And that old frame? No longer just decoration, but a reminder. I once had everything and didn't know how to hold on to it. The next morning, I was nibbling on a dry piece of toast when Lila and Sophie burst in from the yard, cheeks red from the cold. They were holding a small, foil-wrapped box like it was treasure. "Grandma, we made banana bread," Lila beamed, placing the box on the table. "We baked it with Mom last night, before she dropped us off. She said it tastes best after a night in the fridge." Sophie nodded eagerly. "I remember Mom saying you like banana bread soft, with lots of walnuts." I opened the box. The scent of ripe banana and cinnamon hit me soft and warm, like an old embrace from my younger motherhood days. The pieces were cut into uneven squares, a little messy, but clearly made with care. "Smells so good," I murmured, not realizing I'd said it out loud. I took a small bite. Just sweet enough, tender, nutty, and something else, not from the ingredients, but from the hands that made it. Maybe it was love. Maybe daughterhood. "Your mom taught you?" I asked, eyes still on the half-eaten piece. "Yep," Lila said. "Mom said to bring it to you since she was too busy to deliver it herself." I swallowed quickly, but something caught in my throat. Suddenly, I felt like an old woman staring through the bakery window of someone else's life, watching warmth I couldn't quite reach. I set the piece down and listened to them chatter about how they mashed the bananas with a fork, how their mom added honey because Grandma likes it that way. I said nothing, just placed my hand lightly over Lila's, resting her chin in her palm as she spoke. And somewhere in my chest, something softened, like that slice of banana bread, still warm in my heart. I hate going to the hospital. The smell of disinfectant, the harsh fluorescent lights, the cold plastic chairs, they all make me feel small. Not in a sweet, delicate way, but in a fragile, breakable way. Still, Carl insisted I go after I fell at the market last week. He didn't argue, just handed me my coat and grabbed the car keys. My doctor was a young black woman named Alice. Warm voice, clear words, no rush. Not like those big city doctors who treat you like numbers. She made me do an x-ray, checked my blood pressure, rotated my shoulder. After jotting down some notes, she turned and looked at me. Not mocking, just firm, uncomfortably so. "Mrs. Martha, your left knee is deteriorating, not just from age, from overuse." I smirked. "I have to stay busy. I don't do well sitting around." "You can stay busy," she replied, "but pick things that heal you, not the kind that leave you crumpled on concrete." Her voice was low, but sharp like a clean slice of truth. I glanced at Carl. He didn't speak, just held my hand quietly. Alice continued, softer now. "If you don't rest properly, don't wear a brace or start therapy. In 6 months, you may need a wheelchair." I didn't answer. Her words echoed through my mind, not because I feared the chair, but because I knew, once I couldn't walk anymore, I'd have no excuse left to ignore what I've avoided. On the ride home, I said nothing. Carl didn't push. The breeze slipped through a cracked window, bringing the scent of jasmine from beyond the fence. I stared outside, fingers tracing the calluses in my palms. 6 months. Was that a warning? Or my last chance? I didn't know. But I knew this. I've spent too many years running from what hurt. Maybe it's time to stop. That afternoon, the air turned colder. I lay stretched on the couch, knee propped up, still aching from the fall. Carl had gone to the store. The girls were playing quietlier, so I thought, until I heard little footsteps approaching. Lila appeared first, holding a small pillow from her room. Sophie followed, cradling a thin blanket. They stood by me, exchanged a glance, then nodded like they'd practiced this moment. "Grandma, can I put this under your leg?" Lila asked, in the tiniest, gentlest voice like an old lullaby playing from a dusty radio. I didn't respond, just watched. She knelt down, slipped the pillow beneath my knee, and gently patted it as if I were her baby. Sophie laid the blanket over my legs, smoothed the corners, then adjusted the edges. "Mom says your feet get cold. Cover them just enough to stay warm, not sweaty." I had no words. None of my daughters-in-law had ever done anything like this. And now these 2 little girls, not even out of elementary school, were tending to me with all they'd learned from their mother. I tried not to cry. Truly tried. "Thank you," I whispered, hoarse and small. Sophie looked up. "Are you hurting, Grandma?" I nodded. Not because of the knee, but because of another ache. Quieter, deeper, somewhere behind my ribs. Lila sat beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. "Mom says we have to take good care of you," she said, "because you're the strongest person in the house." I let out a soft chuckle of fragile mix of shame and gratitude. I didn't tell them this, but at that moment, I didn't feel strong at all. I felt old, slower, full of old mistakes. But with that pillow under my leg and 2 tiny hands holding mine, my heart felt as soft and sweet as a slice of banana bread, left out overnight, warm, gentle, and falling apart. I don't usually dream, but last night, I saw myself standing in this very kitchen only. It was empty. No laughter, no smell of food, No one. Everything in the dream was hazy, but the memory was sharp. When I woke up, it was still dark. A faint yellow light glowed through the kitchen window. I made some tea and sat at the table out of habit. I remembered the day Jenny left this house, the day I said things I shouldn't have. I saw it like a slow-motion film. Jenny at the back door, holding her baby, the older one tugging her dress. She turned, eyes red but dry. And me, standing there with a colander in hand, cold. I'm sorry, I never said that. Instead, I told her, if you thought for a second, you wouldn't hurt people like this. Then I shut the door. That old wooden door slammed with a heavy thud. I'd heard that sound every day for years, but that time, it cracked through my chest. She never came back. This morning, I opened that same door. Still sturdy, still working, but my hands trembled more than they used to. The kids were awake, playing Uno on the floor. I looked at them, then at the door, and wondered maybe doors never really shut. Maybe it's our hearts that do. And if that's true, can I open mine again, with hands that shake? That afternoon, a light rain fell wet but not cold. Carl was drying glasses in the kitchen. I was flipping through the calendar, counting out pill days. Everything felt normal until he looked up. His eyes lingered longer than usual. "Are you still mad at Jenny?" he asked, soft but sharp like glass clinking. I didn't answer. My eyes stayed fixed on the red circle marking my birthday. Ellie had called last week. She said she'd send flowers. I thought Carl would mention that. Instead, he brought up Jenny. "Why do you ask?" I tried to sound calm, but my voice was thin. "Because you still haven't called her." He placed the last glass on the rack and sat down across from me. "And every time the girls mention their mom, you look away." I wanted to argue, but he kept going. "You used to blame her for working too far, for leaving the kids, for being broke. But have you ever wondered, if she were like Ellie, successful, wealthy, would you still hate her?" My throat closed up. I had asked myself that many times, but never aloud. Carl didn't accuse. He just looked sad. "I think you love Ellie because she's easy to brag about. Jenny makes you uneasy. She stays silent. She endures. She hurts without asking you to notice." I sat still. "I'm not picking sides," Carl said. "I just want you to think, while you still can." I turned away, hiding a tear I didn't plan on shedding. I hate being seen through, but worse is knowing someone's right. Carl stood, gently. "We can't go back and fix it, Martha. We can only fix what comes next." He stepped out back, left me alone in the warm kitchen. One glass on the table still held steam like my eyes, and my heart felt its first crack, not from anyone else, but from me. That night I dreamed. Not a foggy dream, but one sharp as glass-bright lights, bleach smell, the beeping of a heart monitor. I was alone in a sterile hospital room. No Carl, no kids, no one. Just flickering ceiling lights and cold white walls. I tried to move, couldn't. My left leg felt like concrete, my hands too weak to reach my face. I opened my mouth to call out, but no sound came, just dry wind scraping my throat. I waited for anyone to come in, a nurse, a doctor, Carl, Jenny, Lila, anyone. But the door never opened. Only a clock on the wall ticked, reminding me I was alive, but cruelly reminding me I was alone. I turned my head and saw a photo frame on the bedside table. Me young teaching, chalk in hand, eyes bright. Seeing myself made me cry. Not for lost youth, but because that woman didn't know who I'd become. The dream ended with the sound of a door opening, but when I turned, it was only darkness flooding in. No one came. My chest clenched. If I don't call others in, if I keep trying to be strong all alone like always, then maybe all I'll end up with is an empty room. I woke up in the night, eyes dry. Carl slept beside me, breathing slow. I sat up, adjusted the blanket, hand resting on my aching knee. In my head, that dream clock still ticked. And I wondered, if that day really comes, will anyone walk in? Early morning. Still dark. I tried to roll over and get up for my pills, but the pain in my knee shot up like lightning. My left hand tingled from sleeping wrong. My back stiff like a board. I tried to sit up alone. The harder I pushed, the sharper the pain. "Carl," I whispered. No answer. He'd gone out early for milk, I remembered. The girls were still asleep. I lay still, staring at the ceiling. My ceiling, not the hospital's blank. But it felt the same, silent, helpless, alone. I took a deep breath. Tried again. My hand groped for the cane butt, couldn't reach it. Right as I was about to give up and just wait, the door creaked. "Grandma?" Lila's voice. Small and sleepy. She stood in the doorway, hair a mess. Sophie followed, hugging her stuffed bunny. She stared at me, then ran over. "You can't get up, huh?" Lila asked. Calm, not scared. I tried a weak smile and shook my head. They didn't speak again, just came to my side. One on each side. Their little arms helped lift me just enough to sit up against the pillows. Sophie fetched a warm towel. Lila poured water, held the glass with both tiny hands so mine wouldn't shake. I sipped, just plain water. But something thick slid down my throat. Not from old age, not from pain, but from realizing I wasn't alone. I rested my hand on Lila's head. "Thank you. Grandma's okay now." They nodded. Quiet. They adjusted the pillows, fixed the blanket. Saturday on the floor, waiting for my breath to steady. For the first time in days. This room, my room, didn't feel like the dream. Because two small hands had walked in. And because of that, I finally knew. I did need someone. And I wasn't too late to say it. That noon, when Carl got home, I was already sitting in the armchair in the living room. The girls were playing outside with building blocks, sunlight slanting through the window onto the thin blanket over my knees. Carl placed the grocery bag on the table, poured me a glass of orange juice, and sat down beside me. He didn't ask if I was in pain. He already knew. Only his eyes asked. I looked outside, where Lila was helping Sophie lift a toppled plastic chair. They chirped like baby birds, needing no instruction. "Carl," I whispered. He turned to me. "They really take after their mother," I said. "Just like the way Jenny used to do everything quietly without needing praise." Carl nodded. "I know. You know. We just didn't say it." I gripped the glass in my hands, eyes fixed on the girls. Then, like a breeze brushing through my chest, I heard myself whisper, "This morning, Lila kissed my hand when she helped me sit up." Carl stayed silent. I didn't need a reply. I just needed to say it. "My hands are rough and calloused," I continued. Yet she bowed down as if I were someone worthy of tenderness. Carl placed his hand over mine, not squeezing. Just enough so I'd know I wasn't trembling alone. I drew a deep breath, chest tightening. I think I was wrong. Not just with Jenny, but in the way I've loved. I handed out love like a vendor at a market only. Those who paid enough got the good parts. And those who lacked, I left them out. Carl said nothing. He just gently brushed a silver strand from my forehead like he used to when I was young. I turned to him, eyes red. "I want to make things right, Carl, but I don't know if I still have time." He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled softly, like watching someone waking from a long sleep. "Then start now. This moment's good enough." I nodded, and for the first time in ages, I whispered in my heart, "I'm sorry, Jenny." I hadn't said it aloud, but I dared to think it. And that, too, is a step, right? That afternoon, the sky wasn't sunny nor rainy. Just a misty gray veil, not cold. Just still. I sat alone on the porch, blanket across my legs, holding an old photo album Carl had pulled from the attic earlier. As I turned the pages, I saw faces changed by timeline. Carl's, our sons, our daughters in, laws. One photo showed Jenny in her youth, wearing a pale blue dress, holding baby Lila under the grapevine in the backyard, smiling brightly. I touched her face. My hand trembled not from age, but because my heart wasn't used to this new softness. Carl brought out 2 cups of tea, placed one beside me, then sat quietly. I spoke softly. I think I was wrong to let pride take the place of love. Carl sipped his tea, quiet as always, but deep. After a moment, he asked, "So what will you do?" I didn't answer right away. I watched the girls lining up stones in the yard. Lila hummed while arranging them, and Sophie drew shapes in the dirt with a stick. I let out a long breath. I don't know, but if I stay silent, if I do nothing, one day they'll remember me as the grandma who only watched. Carl smiled faintly. Then start with something small, like how they do for you. I turned to him and smiled genuinely, without burden. Do you think I should talk to Jenny? No, he said. I think you should meet her. Meet. A simple word, yet heavier than dinner. I nodded, unsure if I had the courage, but I knew if there was ever a day to begin, this soft gray afternoon was the one, because my heart couldn't bear another one passing without trying. That night, after the girls went to bed, Carl and I sat in the living room as always. No television, no music, just the soft lamp glow and wind slipping through the window crack. I lifted my teacup, then set it down. I didn't want tea. I wanted to speak. Carl, my voice raspy, I think I was truly wrong. He looked up from his book, didn't interrupt, just waited. Not because I scolded her, not because I favored one over the other, but because I never gave Jenny a real chance to show who she was. I leaned forward, fingers laced. I thought I was fair, rational. But maybe I only loved those who made it easy to love them. Carl didn't speak. He knew I needed to let it all out. Jenny never asked anything from me. All she needed was to feel like she belonged in this house, and I denied her that because she wasn't like me. I turned toward the window, pale moonlight filtering through the glass. Today, when Lila kissed my hand, I felt unworthy. I don't understand why they still love me after all the coldness, silence, and rules. Carl put his book down, leaned closer. They love you because they're bigger-hearted than you think, and because they learned that from their mother. I nodded slowly, throat tight. I want to see Jenny, I said. Not to explain, just to apologize. Carl didn't reply. He just took my hand for the first time in weeks without words. His hand was still warm, despite the years. That night, I sat in the living room for a long time. Not to dwell on the past, but to gather courage for tomorrow. A day I would speak first, so no one else would have to suffer in silence again. Not for pride, but because love had finally found its voice. The next morning, I woke up later than usual. Carl was out gardening, and the girls were whispering in the living room voices, like excited little birds plotting a secret. Moments later, Sophie came in, holding a crooked yellow cardboard heart. "Grandma, we made this for you," she beamed, stepping in with sunlight in her smile. Lila followed, clutching a pale pink pencil. "We wrote something. Want to read it?" I sat up and took the card. On its bumpy surface were uneven, shaky letters. "Grandma, we love you. Mommy loves you too. She doesn't say it, but she taught us to take care of you because you're strong. We hope you feel better." Below were 3 hearts in different sizes. One had Mommy written slanted inside. I stared at the paper. The writing was messy, spelling imperfect, but each letter carved into me, soft, deep, and real. "Grandma," I drew Mommy. Sophie pointed to a stick figure with long hair and a blue dress. "She's hugging you and smiling." I traced the drawing. My hand trembled not from age this time. I swallowed hard, folded the card, and placed it over my chest. "Thank you, my loves. I'll keep this forever." Lila asked softly, "So, when our mom comes back, will you talk to her?" I nodded, holding back tears. I will. I'll say what I should have said long ago. They hugged me, warm and soft like an autumn morning sky. I don't know how Jenny taught them, but I know one thing. Her heart never left this home. Even when I shut the door, she sent love back. In pencil scribbles, tiny arms, and the small hands that lift my back each morning when I can't stand up on my own. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters.